Hi, everyone. This is the Cloak and Dagger weekly briefing with Albert Marko and myself, Tony Nash. We just had a big post from Trump today saying he's canceling his trip to South Korea to see Xi Jinping. It's a big message that U.S.-China trade talks aren't going well, which is something we've expected, and we've posted things on it on Cloak and Dagger. And it seems like it's kind of become reality. So markets are selling off and, all sorts of things, flight to quality and all that stuff has started, although I don't think it's going to be a full deal. And I think, Albert, just real quick, it seems to me that do you think there would be a emergency Fed cut or something as a result of this? Or do you think Treasury will intervene somehow to keep markets from falling apart?
Well, I mean, market's falling apart. Here's the thing. This is like a rinse and repeat that we've seen over and
Yeah.
over again with Trump and China and trade and whatever. And it just seems to me that they just use this as a setup for the next leg up in the markets. Where the things were
Uh,
so high, tech was so high, and
yeah.
sold off like whatever, like 1% today, 1.5%.
Ooh,
Like, oh,
wow.
end of the world. And but then meanwhile, you see like Fidelity coming out with a report saying all their people are buying the dip with Nvidia and AMD and stuff.
The
I mean,
1% dip.
yeah, the 1% dip. But I mean, they've done this so many times. So it's like, why would you not play it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's clear that they want this thing up at 7,000 on the
Yeah.
ES. So why
Like
would you
we
not
talked
play
about a
it?
week ago.
Yeah, why would you not play it?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, even from even from everything that we've seen is just over and over again, the same thing until something like catastrophically breaks. But I don't see anything
Sure.
break.
Yeah. So we posted a couple things this week on China. We posted something on soybeans, the soybean trade, and how that's
Mhm.
adjusted. We talked about how gold is adjusted largely because China's central bank has done 40% of the central bank buying of gold this year. And
Mhm.
so, we see that as a CNY play, a Chinese yuan play, where they're kind of getting rid of CNY, paying for gold in CNY so that when they devalue that currency, they can buy it back at a different value. We've talked about these rare earth restrictions. So let's start with soybeans. Albert, can you talk us through the soybean stuff and what your thoughts are on how China is kind of using that as a tool?
Yeah, I mean, soybeans is only one thing that they buy, but I mean, it's just the biggest, one of the biggest. I've said this over and over again, multiple times, that if you want to win the Senate, you need rural voters, right? And to do that, you have to get the farm bill, agriculture, the religious vote, the abortion vote, all that out to play. And the Chinese are not stupid. You know, they know exactly how that works and what pressure points to use. They've used GM for the auto industry in the past, where they boosted up Buick inside of China, which made up a significant portion of GM's profits. And then, well, they can always, press a button and tariff it, and down comes the stock price. And you just do the same thing with soybeans. And everyone was like, oh, the soybean, it's over. Agriculture is over. Last year, China had like the highest record soybean purchases of the in the United States is
Yes.
so it's like
It's
this,
look at, panic about the headlines, but then look at what actually happens.
yeah, I mean, you know China better than I do, and you can definitely tell me what the Chinese want to buy aside from soybeans, like hogs and so on and so forth. I mean,
Soybeans, sorghum, all that stuff. And they've been cultivating Argentina as a secondary soybean source. So Brazil, Argentina, and I think Argentina is kind of an economic battle between China and the US right now. Not many people are talking about it. They're looking about, the US going in to save Malay, and we wrote about that earlier this week as well. But Argentina is an economic battleground between China and the US right now, as is Venezuela, as are, a bunch of different places. So,
all of Latin America is, and I
yep.
don't understand why the U.S. has like abandoned it for 30, 40 years, whatever. And that's an entirely different topic, but
I
if
think
we
we were so involved in the 70s that, we just kind of, our hands were burned and people just didn't want to touch it. After all the stuff with in Chile and other places, people were just afraid to get involved. And then you had the fallout in the early 90s with
Mhm.
Mexico and the debt, and it was just a mess, and they didn't want to get
We
in.
need to have another fallout with Mexico
Yep,
and
exactly.
Canada.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
Yep. So the other thing I want to talk about is gold, and we published some stuff this week about gold and how China's been kind of buying gold to prepare for a CNY deval, and it's interesting when we posted that, and you're much more prepared for this than I am, Albert, but the really negative comments we got from people just saying, "Hey, this is a CNY issue, it's not a USD issue." And the really dumb responses that we get saying, "Oh, it's all fiat is garbage." Like, look,
oh my God, this
yeah,
argument over and
it's
over
so
again.
stupid. Look,
It,
the US dollar is gold. Okay. The US dollar is gold. And up until 1971, gold was gold. But after 1971, the US dollar became gold. Right. And
yeah,
so go ahead.
no, it's just these guys like sit there and talk about fiat's over with and blah blah, and really they're gold, and a few of them are gold. More of them are crypto guys hoping that the dollar and
Oh, yeah.
all fiat goes away, and their stable coins are the world reserve currency, and they're going to be riding yachts into the sunset with
Yeah.
Ukrainian models and so on and
Right.
so forth.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen. Okay, I'm just letting you know that's not. You can forget about that. That's not how reserve currencies work. That's not how governments work. That's not how settlement works, so on and so forth. I mean, gold was suppressed for 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
you know, and now you're getting this windfall of profits if everyone holds it. But realistically, not one of you gold bugs are using gold to go to the store and buy stuff with.
No,
Not
it's
one of you.
GLD. You can't go to the store and use an ETF to buy bread, right?
No, you cannot. I can't take my stock, my GM stock, and go and say, hey, here's some GM
Right.
stock. Give me a 12 pack of course. It doesn't
Right.
work like that, right? Same thing
Right.
with gold. None of that works.
Here's the funny part about the whole fiat is garbage. Okay. So if you look at markets today, Bitcoin is down 4% and the dollar is down like 0.4%. So if fiat really is garbage, then why hasn't the dollar just crashed out and Bitcoin has stayed, stable?
I,
So
it's,
it's just
we
such a
can go
stupid argument.
we can go into it. I
Yeah.
don't want. There's not enough time to go
No,
into
there's not.
explaining how,
But
how dollar, digital dollars is the trade settlement mechanism for the entire global
oh yeah,
trade, and
exactly.
there's not enough time in this podcast
Right.
or my patience, to be quite honest with
Right,
you.
exactly. And so with our piece, we talked about how really it's China that's hoovering up all the gold. Not all of it, but enough of it to kind of be the difference maker. And if they deval, which what we posited in the piece was China's preparing to go long into this trade war, and they're going to use that gold to pay for their imports once they have to deval CNY, right? And so,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, also, I mean, China's a big part of it, but also don't we should, and I should have wrote about it, but don't discount the exuberance of American consumers buying gold just because
Yes.
they're doing it. That
Yeah,
is a good chunk. That is a good chunk of why this price has gone through the roof.
of course, but it's all GLD ETF, right?
Of
They're
course.
not buying physical, they're buying
No,
the
no,
ETF,
no. Of course not. People
right?
are selling physical right now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
They're selling it for dollars at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's one interesting thing to watch. The other thing that we looked at was the rare earth stuff that came out yesterday, and we published a piece on that today, basically saying, look, this is the same old chestnut that China rolls out on a regular basis. They did it in April when Trump put the trade issues out. They did it a couple of years ago. This is just a hollow threat. And in China, if you bribe the right person, you can circumvent the regulation and you can get whatever you want. So this
Of
isn't
course.
a major issue. I don't see it as a major issue. I see it as more signaling than it really is a major policy change.
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, rare earths are not really that rare.
Yep.
And everyone knows that the refining capacities are really are where it's at. And sure, China has the edge on that for now, but listen, the United States and Western Europe, they're already looking at alternatives. They're looking
Yeah.
at the Middle East. They're looking at North Africa. They're looking, we're looking at, Mexico and Central America to
Yep.
do all this stuff. So they're on borrowed time. The Chinese aren't dumb. They're pragmatic. They
They know.
understand
Yep.
that this thing won't last. So it's just buying time, and the Chinese could throw out whatever propaganda they want out there.
Yep.
But they're hurting just as bad, and they certainly don't want to see, a magnets and semiconductors weaponized on both sides of the
No,
ocean.
they don't. And
No,
this is the thing that it's easy to dramatize, but there is a positive relationship with the US and China. They both sides want this to work out. And a lot of this is playing to the domestic audience because they want to look strong to their domestic audience. China's economy is weak. The US economy is, I would say, on a relative basis, weak. It's not as,
weakening,
yeah,
weakening.
it's not as strong as is trying to be portrayed, but it's not as weak as China, right? So both sides need to play to their home audience. Both sides need to look tough. And, it's possible. I'm not saying this is probable, but I think it's possible we get to November 10th and they announce a trade deal, right? I would say right now it's not probable, but I would
No,
say you give it like a 40% probability that there is a trade deal on November 10th, and then we rally into the end of the year, right?
course, get that Santa rally to 7,000 on the
That's
ES,
right. That's right, you do.
and then you buy your ES puts for the
Exactly.
summer and have fun.
Exactly. So, is there anything else you're looking at? I mean, like on a headline for the U.S. trade talks with China going into the next 4 weeks?
Honestly, just Trump's poll numbers.
Yep.
That's all I'm keying off of. I mean, if the shutdown is one thing, he'll get a boost once that opens up a little bit. Well, maybe the market might, but as this market drops, I mean, I think we're already down like to 66.20 something. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, once again, the taco Trump trade starts to come about, and I'm just going to watch his poll numbers as they sink and people start getting antsy and inflation numbers, even just the headlines of inflation
Yes.
start to make the rounds. What does Trump do? Is most likely what he always does, back down and rally this market to 7,000.
Yep. But
That's
then
all
after
I'm looking at.
7,000, what happens?
Well, I wouldn't want to be in this market at that point. I think we're headed for really bad economic news in 2026. I think we'll probably have another surge of inflation. It's always been my base case. Well, I don't know if it's going to be 5-6%, but it'll be 4, right? Which will rattle the markets.
Especially if there isn't a U.S.-China trade deal, we could see that.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. On top of just China and the U.S., and you talk about the European Union. I mean, look at Germany. Germany is in a catastrophe. They're in a crisis right now, so they're
Yeah.
going to have to be very protectionist going forward over their trade.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens, and I would love to see 7,000 just so I could short the living crap out of it, which I will. But that's it. I'm just keying off of Trump's poll numbers.
Yeah, it'll be great to watch and see over the next month what happens. So you started talking about Europe. So we wrote a bit about France earlier this week, and I want to kind of talk through that and the conservative movement. You mentioned Germany. I don't know that Mers really has the ability to change the policies to what he needs. So can you talk us a little bit through France, what's happening there? And also, let's talk a little bit about kind of conservative movements in Europe. We've talked about this over the years, but I think it's starting to become more kind of frontline news.
Well, finally, the French far left and the far right have enough power combined to, collapse Macron's government, and that's what they're doing. I mean, this is a pure political play for snap elections because both the far right and far left feel that they'd be able to snatch more votes from Macron's centrist party. So I think that's where it all boils down to. The French economy is not doing that great. Never has been really,
Yep.
right? Um, Going into the winter, see prices probably inflate a little bit over there. Nothing good, and nothing different from the European Union, specifically France and Germany.
What do you see happening with the ECB? Will they get massively dovish to support all these things so that you don't get conservative governments coming in 26?
I think they're going to have to, right? They're going to have to, but they got to balance that out with inflation. right?
Right.
They don't, they start saying, oh, well, our inflation targets are in line and they're coming down. I'm like, yeah, well, your economies are not doing anything. There's nothing going
Right.
on. Nobody has
Right.
jobs.
So your real
Nobody,
growth is
well, growth is nothing
right.
over there. So of course it's going to be inflation is going to be tame. You
Right.
start becoming dovish, you start cutting rates, and we'll see how that works out later on.
Right. So this wasn't really on the agenda, Albert, but we have a new LDP leader in Japan who's got a dovish bias. We've got
Mm-hmm.
an ECB that's got a dovish bias. We have I know it's small, but a New Zealand central bank that cut by 50 basis points this past week. We have a almost guaranteed 25 cut by the Fed this month, and depending on what happens with the shutdown, I think 50 might become a discussion point. So we have this move toward easing in central banks globally. What does that mean for you? Like, what are you watching for when we have this coordinated easing across central banks?
I think it's the Fed directing other central banks to cut and see what happens in the data so they can figure out whether they do 25, 50, or 75 in the coming 3 to 6 months. That's
Do
all.
you think 75 is on the table for, say, December or something?
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no. I think 25 is pretty much guaranteed. 50 if something bad is happening with trade in the markets.
Yeah.
75, another 25 probably, just after the new year.
Okay. So just going back, since we're talking central bank policy, just going back to the China trade thing for a second. If there isn't a deal come November 10th, and with the dollar, right around 99, which it's strengthened a little bit, although it's not up on the year, but it has strengthened a little bit. Do you think that the US administration would push for a much stronger dollar, like a 105, $110, if China won't come to the table?
If China won't come to the table and they truly believe inflation's an issue, I can absolutely see 105. Right?
Okay.
And they should. They should take it to 105, to be honest with you. Yeah,
Okay.
they absolutely should. And
So
you can
that's
see
a
because
three,
you can
6 month kind of horizon.
yeah, yeah, I'd say 3 months. You can start seeing it a little bit because the yen started falling. The see, the EU, the euro fell a little bit versus the dollar and whatnot. A lot of those people say, "Oh, that's based on gold." I'm like, yeah, a little bit, but
Not a
you
lot.
know,
Yeah.
not all of it. So
So with dollar at 105, DX, say 105, 110, say let's say 108 or something like that. How much pain does China feel and why?
that's a big question, man. Oh, that's a big question. Um, it really depends on what happens with gold, right? Because if you're talking about the dollar at 110 and gold retracing down to like 30, like the 2,700 or 2,800,
Possible.
all those central banks that you know fell on this whole failed reserve currency narrative that Basant's been pushing are going to feel the pain extraordinarily fast.
But that's a plausible scenario, right?
It's a very plausible scenario. It's
Yeah.
very plausible. Listen, I'm not a fan of Scott Basant by any means, right? For him to sit there and fake the whole narrative of the reserve currency is failing, buy gold and whatever is so diabolical. But I mean, if he takes the dollar to 110 and reverses it, I mean, holy crap, I'm gonna have to tip my hat off to that guy because that
Everyone's holding the bag, right?
that would be the biggest rug pull and bunch of bag holders that you have ever seen.
Well, yeah. And China's about 40% of the central bank gold this year. Okay.
Yeah, but it's hard because you don't even know what they buy because they buy via proxies and stuff like that. So it could be
Yeah.
more. It
It
could be
could be
more.
more,
Yeah.
right? So if we see gold plunge, if the dollar is up to 105, 110, then China's holding that bag and they better deval faster than the fall in gold.
Oh yeah, they're gonna have to do something drastic quickly.
Yeah, so you're looking at 10 to 20%. We're not calling it. I just want to be
No,
clear
no,
about that. But
this is
if
a
in
theoretical
that
talk.
scenario,
Yeah,
what's that?
this is theoretical between you and
Yeah,
I. Yeah.
in that scenario, China has to deval by like 20% if they want to catch up, right?
Good luck
It
with that.
could be a very interesting world in 2026.
Yeah, for
All right,
sure.
let's just leave it at that. Very interesting. Albert, thanks for your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.